Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. With the spread of COVID-19 causing a blow to the travel industry, airlines and travel agents are experiencing massive disruption to their normal business. As governments and organizations address the ongoing situation, fraudsters are unfortunately finding opportunity to attack unsuspecting businesses and individuals during the confusion. With today's webinar, we hope to provide you with some helpful insights to support your business. Over to Doug for some insights from ARC.
My name is Kirk Nass. I'm the Director of Fraud Investigations at ARC. In fact, today is the 25th anniversary of me starting at ARC Fraud Prevention, so seen a lot. I really thought that after 9/11, we would never see another, another thing as bad as 9/11, but here we are in something apocalyptic. Can I confirm, is everyone able to see the screen? So we really wanted to reach out with between ARC and some of the partners that we have in the fraud prevention industry, such as Perseus and Gemini Advisory, to give everyone an idea of what's going on out there in this new world of COVID-19, how it's impacting your businesses, the entire spectrum in the travel industry, as we're in a very new world, starting in the last probably 6 to 8 weeks. And no one really knows where we're headed. Okay. So starting with that, we'll talk a little bit about you can see some of the guests we have that will be participating today, but with the agenda, we at ARC are going to give a few insights as to, what we're seeing, what's the data showing, but also what's happening thanks to our partners at Gemini of the dark web and the trends they're seeing, and across the board with Perseus and the airline and agent trends as well. So let's start a little bit of background of what we're seeing at ARC. We all know there's very few people flying these days. The volumes are. Oh, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you, Doug.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure I'm still connected. But we're seeing, the volumes across the board around the world down, 85, 90%. So it's just a shocking development. And we wanted to give a little insight, but that doesn't mean fraudsters aren't operating as well. So what we're seeing, there's scams out there. And we're definitely worried in this new environment of, agencies, they want to keep their business going, but we need to do it, in a smart, knowing how these scammers operate, what they're doing. Some of the scams that we're aware of, they're still calling agencies. We're seeing, they're now, instead of in the past, everything is, reverends and ministers, they're still doing that, but doctors especially. And this is where they're really going to start pulling on the heartstrings of people who are going to call up in a panic, most likely, and just say, hey, my daughter, my grandmother has the COVID-19, and she has no one to care for her. I need you, travel agent, to help me out. And so they're really going to pull on the heartstrings of course, everyone in the industry is trained in customer service, and you want to do what you can, but scammers are going to manipulate this, guaranteed. Claiming they're a doctor, they need to move around as well. Nurses, they're, in an area that's not as impacted as some other areas, and they're going to be flying to areas that need assistance. We're also going to see the scammers who are taking over GDSs continue to operate. whereby you're going to get a phishing email and it says, it might come from your GDS. It might come from another vendor saying, please log into this link embedded in an email, and thinking maybe this is legit. And now what those phishing emails do are they're harvesting GDS logins and passwords, and now they can remotely control a GDS set anywhere in the world. So those are things that concern. We're seeing things definitely, emails enticing people with claiming to be from the government, say the IRS. We're ready to send you your relief check, and we just need your bank credentials to deposit that check. Financial service, like the banks, we're giving out low-cost loans. Do you want to participate? They're really using that fear. Where's my rent coming from, my mortgage, my car payment? I need to feed my family. Scammers are absolutely going to, and they already have, they're going to be manipulating those fears in everybody around the world. They're going to make bank now, whether they use it now or not. When people start to get a little more comfortable, hopefully in the coming months, the credentials that they've harvested from unsuspecting victims, they will manipulate, and they're going to sell them to other, if they don't use them themselves, they're going to be selling those credentials and things to other criminals to use. So those are some of the things that, we at ARC want to make sure that everyone's aware of, and just do what we can to spread the word. We are on lockdown. That doesn't mean the fraudsters are on lockdown. They're always thinking of ways to continue to manipulate people and get what they want, which is, with GDS information, credit card information, your bank account information, they're going to want it because they can monetize it. So now, with that said, that those dire warnings, let us hand off to Andre and Gemini Advisory to see what his team is seeing in the Darknet. Thanks, Andre.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you for making all valid points that the bad guys never sleep. Although you'll see from one of my slides that for a while, bad guys truly didn't have any income coming in, and initially we saw that the COVID-19 affected bad guys and criminal operations in the same negative way how it affected everyone else's lives. But we do see now that the bad guys are beginning to adapt. They're beginning to develop new methods, new tools, new services, new ways to scheme people, to steal funds, whatever left of it on victims' bank accounts. And, we all should be very, very careful right now with who we trust, what emails we open, what text messages we reply to, because it may as well be coming not from your bank, not from the government officials, but from the fraudsters. So if we can, let's please move on to the first slide. So as Gemini, we have quite unique visibility into myriad of cyber criminal forums and chat rooms and communities. So we have an intimate knowledge of how the bad guys actually operate. And a lot of times we have the visibility into various fraudulent schemes which are yet to be deployed in the real life. So we can see what's happening or what's about to happen before the criminals actually make their moves. And in many cases, it allows us to send out the advance notice to the potential victims, so to potential customers, or to our customers, I would say, to prevent, fraud or bad things from happening as much as we can, of course. So, for example, in this first slide, what you see is the message from one of the well-established cyber criminals whose job is to control and to distribute a botnet. So for those of you who are not familiar with botnet is basically a network of infected systems, computers or smartphones or any sort of internet-connected devices. And depending on the devices, the bad guys can then use it for to initiate DDoS attacks, denial of service attacks. They can also intercept whatever sensitive information you may have on your device, such as your bank account logins or payment card information or access to your email or other types of sensitive information. So it's very lucrative, but it's a tedious business. It's not an easy process to infect a lot of victims. It's a long process that requires a lot of planning, a lot of moving parts involved, meaning that you have to figure out how to distribute your malware, how to distribute and how to infect, how to find the web traffic, how to find the people, and how to convince the people to click on the malware, on the malicious file, or how to convince them to go to a specific website which you control. So we were very surprised to find the message from this actor on a top-tier hacking forum, primarily Russian-speaking forum, but we do see a good number of English-speaking users as well. So this actor was actually bragging that in a single week, because of the increased web traffic, because so many people are nowadays staying at home and they have to work from home, and obviously a lot of people anxious for any sort of news. Everybody's on their smartphones and devices, that within a single week, he was able to infect almost 1 million victims. And this is a lot. Most of the botnets don't even have half of this on an ongoing basis. If a criminal controls 500,000 infected devices, that would be one of the largest botnets, ever. But in this case, this criminal was sharing that within a single week, he was able to infect almost 1 million victims. So you have to keep in mind that, each system represents a single victim, single computer, single smartphone. And obviously, by having a control, they have now obtained access to not just regular people, but businesses, right? And on the dark web, the access to a business nowadays is the cream a la cream, right? This is what every bad guy is after. Not only they are interested in the personal, sensitive information, but will know about the ransomware. So if a bad guy knows that you operate a business and you're in a vulnerable position, it's a very, very good chance that they will attempt to infect your system with ransomware and then demand ransom in order for you to get access back to your files. So this is, a very, very huge trend which is happening right now, where the bad guys target businesses and not individual account holders or just individual users. So make sure you have backups. Doc, we can move on to the next slide. So in this forum, also Russian-speaking forum, and I know it's bad, that it seems that almost all high-level, really impactful criminal forums are controlled. Doc, we can actually see all your emails.
Yeah, I was trying to get out of that earlier. Sorry about that.
No, keep going. So it seems that all top-tier, hacking forums in some form or shape are controlled by Russian-speaking actors, not necessarily based in Russia, but they may be in Ukraine, Belarus, or some other countries. So in this specific case, we actually once again seen a message from a fraudster who's basically saying that the number of transactions, and he's referring to the e-commerce transactions, right, had increased dramatically because everybody's buying goods and services right now online rather than going to the physical stores. So it makes much more challenging for the companies to identify fraudulent transactions from the legitimate ones, because now you kind of like all of the patterns that were kind of like dictating how you identify fraud were thrown out the window, because now people kind of like do 10 times more transactions suddenly. So it's harder for the legitimate company to identify fraud. At the same time, it's easier for the bad guys to hide amidst the legitimate transactions. We can go to the next slide. So on this slide, we actually picked up a discussion among several criminals who were actually concerned about the effect of COVID-19 on their businesses, right? So the first guy was actually asking an open-ended question saying, hey, what do you think is going to happen to our business? And typically he would refer to the business of stolen airline tickets, right, or hotel reservations made with compromised payment card data, stolen goods and services, bank account information, and so on and so forth. And the second guy is basically saying, well, it had already affected the business. It's happening right now. We're losing money right now. And then the last guy actually is saying, well, people are not traveling anymore right now, so nobody can sell any fraudulent tickets. Nobody needs your hotel reservations because everybody's staying at home. So we're seeing that more and more bad guys actually are out of business. It doesn't mean that they're going to disappear, right? We all know that when things are going to get back to normal, they will just get back to what they were doing best, stealing money. But not only they're going to get back to what they did before, but they will probably double the effort so they can recoup some of the money they lost and didn't make in the previous weeks or months. We can move on to the next slide.
Actually, Andrew, I got a question. Is there any chatter on these forums about any predictions? Do they see summer people starting to move around again? Or are they skeptical and maybe really looking at an uptick in the fall? Are there any travel where they think they might be able to start selling sooner than others?
Well, that's what we're seeing is people do think and tend to think that in the summer, sometime in the summer, the life is going to start getting back to more or less normal levels, and people, and especially as governments will start open up the borders, people will begin traveling again. But we have already seen a subtle signals that the demand for the compromised payment card data, and we'll actually have a slide later on, shows that while there has been a significant drop in the demand for the compromised payment card information immediately after the widespread lockdowns began across the globe, the demand for the stolen card data as of this month has been picking up, and it's going up now again, which means that the bad guys are now figuring out the ways how and where to use the stolen card data more effectively. So I think that the overall consensus that summer will be kind of like the first time when the demand will come back to more or less normal levels.
Yeah, and we started to see at ARC the China traffic, of course, really dropped in January, February, and then by about mid to late March, things started to show up again. But unfortunately, it was very scary looking data because last minute ticketing, oftentimes one way from either North America and Europe back to China when the Chinese government seemed to start to open up about 3 weeks ago. And but the data looked very scary. Late departures, premium travel, and it had us very worried. It had us scrambling for about 2 weeks just to make sure that it was all legit. And so far, it did. But those are trends that we're seeing that on the face of it look very worrisome, but it turned out to be okay.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a couple more slides to go. So we also picked up a very interesting message from this specific threat actor, who was actually saying that whenever they bought compromised payment card data, they would typically run a test transaction on the card, a few dollars, $2, $3, just to see if the card is valid. And this guy was saying that very strangely, but almost all my cards had been declined for a very small amount, which basically tells him that people don't really have money left on the bank accounts or on the credit cards, right? All the credit cards have been all maxed out. So he was somewhat concerned, for the future of his business, but at the same time, it kind of like showing us that a lot of people are right now in a very bad financial shape, right? And even the bad guys, can notice the trend and what's happening with the overall population across the globe right now. We can move on to the next one. So we also found one message by an English-speaking actor who was basically saying that previously he was primarily doing in-person payment card fraud, right, where they would encode a stolen card data onto a physical card, and they would walk into a physical store, swipe the card, buy the goods. However, now, since all the stores, not just in the US, but globally, have been pretty much shut down, there is no use for the card present data. But at the same time, he's saying, well, should we be switching to the online fraud? Because, there's so much more money to be made online. And this is once again shows that, more and more criminals are looking to making money online rather than offline. So coupled with the overall increased number of online transactions, legitimate ones, and with the interest from the cyber criminals, it is pretty much safe to assume that more and more, online fraud will begin to happen if it hasn't started yet. And I think we got one more. Oh, actually, we've got a few more. So I think some of you guys may have seen the article from Forbes, which was actually reposted by a lot of media agencies, about a month ago. It's about a malware which pretended to be a legitimate map of the COVID-19 distribution across the globe. But very few people realize that once you access the website, you will be asked to install a very small file on your device, which essentially allows bad guys to open up a backdoor to your system, and they can later on use it anyhow they want to upload more damaging malware. So what the bad guys were doing, they created the actual data, the actual map that would show you the real metrics, real information, but without you knowing, the bad guys would at the same time obtaining access to your system. So if we switch to the next slide, you'll see that we actually found the criminal who was behind this malware and who's still operational. And in this specific case, he wasn't shy. He wasn't worried about, mass media showing his product. And, he was actually bragging to the other bad guys saying, hey, this is very interesting case. Our malware had been picked up by the Fortune magazine actually wrote an article about our malware. Just see how powerful it is, so they can attract more buyers of this malware and to promote it across the dark web. So I think that was a very interesting, case where we found, first the malware itself and then the developer of the malware and how they actually leverage the COVID-19 theme to identify and to detect more victims in the wild. We can skip to the next one. I think this will be the last one. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, this slide basically represents the demand and the average price for the stolen card data, both for the card present and card not present information. And as you can see, the card not present information pretty much remained the same across the last 12 months. But then card present data, while it dipped in January, the price of card present data dipped in January. It pretty much recovered, sometime end of March, beginning of, as we go towards April. So I would say that those businesses that actually operate and accept credit card data either in person or in some cases over the phone, or through the fax, through the email, but when you kind of have to send a copy of the card, or if you have to just pretty much fill up the form. And I know that a lot of travel agencies, at least in the US, still do business like that, where you dial in and the agent will actually take the card information from you. Well, there's so much card present data available for sale right now. I'm talking about tens of millions of cards, available for sale. The bad guys can easily buy a card for $5, $10, $20, and then obviously it will be, much easier, not easier, but easier for them to use it. And we know that once any business right now will be in a position to accept any order they can, right? As long as you can make money, you'll be happy, right? And I think the last thing you'll be thinking about is, whether the transaction is legitimate versus if somebody's trying to, defraud you, because people are so eager to make money right now. So I think that pretty much summarizes my part of the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Andre. And before we go on to the next, I think, Cornelius, I'm going to turn it over to you. But I just remind everybody that you can ask questions to our panel. We have a great amount of knowledge on the phone. If you just go over to the control panel on the right-hand side and type in your questions, we really want to hear from you. So, Cornelius?
Yeah, hi everyone. I finally got my audio sorted, so I'm glad to be in communication with everyone and active here. So apologies for the earlier glitches that we experienced. Andre, thank you very much for that insight. And correct me if I'm wrong, people are probably going to be, especially the fraudsters, buying in bulk, potentially keeping those cards in their back pocket until the economy returns, and the minute that happens, we'll see an increase in fraudulent transactions, and especially in the card not present environment, because most of our businesses, agency operations a lot of them are online and operating there as well. And as you mentioned, do phone bookings as well. So please be vigilant when things do improve. I see we do have a couple of questions in here, so I'll probably use this time quickly to go through one or two of them, unless you want to take over there, but I'm happy to read them out as well, and we can see.
Yeah. Cornelius, we don't have any really on our end yet, but I'm sure we'll be having some come in soon.
Okay, I've got one or two here. Someone's asking here if you have any recommendation on a software that they need to be using. They've switched from Kaspersky, to WebRoot, and we use Malwarebytes. Is there anything else that can be used? Any recommendations or any other?
Maybe I can chime in. Actually, Kaspersky isn't bad software. It did receive a good chunk of bad press, from last year. But all in all, it's one of the best antivirus, software out there. At the same time, if you have the antivirus installed, that's a big plus for you, right? Like it's a good thing. You'll be surprised how many people don't have any antivirus installed. So secondly, it's not so much about the antivirus, but being vigilant, meaning that, if you receive the file, right, make sure you run the file through the antivirus before you actually open the file. If you receive the Excel or Microsoft Office document, and upon opening the file, if it tells you you have to activate macros, ask yourself, what's the point for that? If you know the sender, reach out to the sender and verify that they actually emailed you the document, right? Because a lot of times bad guys would fake the outgoing email address, so you would think that it actually came from someone when in reality the email came from somebody else. So don't just click on the links that your contacts send you, because once again, this is how the bad guys may actually implant the malware on your system. A lot of times they would use a highly obfuscated malware, which won't even be picked up by the antivirus software on your computer, on your device. So the best protection I would say you have is your common sense. Don't be lazy and just, at very least, reach out to your colleague, friend, whoever sent it to you, and verify if they did send you the file instead. And it's always advisable to use different form of communication. So if you receive the file through email, text them, right? Don't reply to them to the same email, because the fraudster will just say, yes, I did send it to you. So text them on the phone, use the WhatsApp, call them, right? So be vigilant. But since you have the antivirus, that's good.
Okay. And then, Andre, quickly, can you just, for the audience, explain the difference between card present and card not present?
Sure. So the card present data typically stolen from in-person payment terminals, right? So a terminal at the gas station, a terminal at the grocery store, or the restaurant. So the bad guys would actually infect that terminal with the malware, which allows them to capture the information when the card is being swiped. And actually, lately, we began seeing more and more card interception, even when the card was used as a chip, right? So when the card was dipped and the EMV chip was used. So this data, the card present data, can only be used online or on the phone, because the MagSharp does not have the CVV code, which would allow it to be used online, at Amazon or some other website, or pretty much any website. Card not present data is typically stolen from the compromised e-commerce websites. So what the bad guys would do, they would brute force access to the website. They would basically gain access as the admin, and they will implant the malware onto the website. So whenever a customer comes into the website and makes the transaction, makes the payment, enters the payment card information, the card data will be intercepted by the malware, will be sent to the bad guys, and they will then use it to make fraudulent online purchase, but they will not be able to encode the information onto the physical card. So that's why there are two separate types of card data available.
Perfect. Thanks, Andre. And one thing for the card not present environment, probably one of the first steps there that you want to do is to secure yourself, is to follow best practices put forward by PCI compliance, right? So you probably want to ensure that your operations have that in place as well as a first line of defense. Thanks for that. Wouter, I think we're handing over to you. Doug, if you don't mind. Perfect.
Yes, definitely. Yes, hi everyone. Thanks, Andre, for the interesting presentation. And Maarten, I hope everyone can hear me loud and clear. My name is Wouter, and I will be presenting on behalf of Perseus today. And also, as you can all see, Maarten, our CEO, is in the call to maybe help answering some questions from the audience. So let's start with some background about Perseus. Perseus is a global database of fraud, helping the travel industry now for over 10 years. Helping over 140 merchants such as airlines and online travel agents. And our mission is to enable access to cross-border fraud data through community-based data sharing. So basically what we do as Perseus, the Perseus data enriches the systems of our customers and returns a risk score for all transactions that are checked via the Perseus database, allowing our customers to decide to accept, to block, or further investigate the transactions. Well, today we are happy to present some of our data insights, some of the trends, but also risks that we are expecting. Also because we're still in close contact with our community members. So we're happy to share this feedback with everyone here. And also we will show you a solution that hopefully can help you in validating all of your customers. Well, despite the lower volumes on sales, fraudsters try to take advantage of market conditions, and fraud units are still facing fraudulent payments. So as you can see here in the first slide, which is about the impact on checked transactions, is that, well, obviously Perseus has a community of members in the travel industry that is checking over millions of transactions per year. And as we can see, and I think Doc already explained so, and it's very obvious that we have seen a large drop of the amount of transactions that are checked against our database, which is for 84% at the moment. And we took the period of 15 March up to 15 April, compared 2019 against 2020, and then we have found those numbers. Not so much of a surprise, but it shows the impact on the business due to the volumes of sales that dropped. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Yes, thanks. So we can still see in our data that fraud teams are working on the topic of fraud and mainly check suspicious transactions manually by entering their data elements linked to suspicious bookings into our system. So in the data we found, so compared to the drop of 84% in automated checks, let's say, that are checked against our Perseus database, we only see an average drop of manual activity of 35%. In our data. So this basically means that some of our customers are basically checking all of their transactions also in a manual way via Perseus. So this decreased also, but way less than the 85% that we have seen before. So this is a smaller decrease than the automated checks. And especially the feedback we received from our community is that it confirms that they still monitor the incoming transactions for potential fraud. But it also indicates that there is still activity going on for the fraud teams. So they're still monitoring all of their transactions for fraud here. Something we also heard from our community and from the fraud teams is that their way of working, let's say, changed a little bit. So some of their tasks now turn towards the refund tasks as well within their organizations. And also, and this is something Doc already shared with us, is that we heard that there are a lot of booking patterns that are changing. So patterns that indicated to be fraud in the past, let's say, now turned out to be legitimate transactions. So for instance, we have seen or heard from our community that they've seen patterns of transactions that have a booking date that is very close to departure, which they usually always noticed as fraudulent, but now makes sense basically because people are trying to go back to their countries. So this perfectly makes sense. Well, also in these scores that we basically return to our drop of 79% in returning risky transactions. So the transactions where the Perseus data returns a risky score, a score that is linked to fraud. So however we see this, or let's say we should see this in perspective. We have a drop of 85% in transactions, But this means that the drop of 79% indicates that still many risky scores are reverted to our customers. So actually the conclusion here is that we remain to see many transactions that are linked to fraud. So those are the insights about the statistics that we can share. Then if we can go to the next slide, please. This is also some feedback we received from our community members. And obviously, when we are going back to normal, hopefully soon, we need to prepare for that. So we have some topics, and maybe we can discuss those later. So first of all, what we heard, corporate travel versus leisure travel. Well, obviously the social distancing means travelers, because of the social distancing means travelers need more time to feel safe again to travel. They might be afraid of visiting busy public places and go into crowded airplanes. And also with the social distancing means, this might mean that in the beginning, airplanes that were filled with 180 passengers might only be filled with 30 passengers at the start. So those measures really make people think whether or not to travel or not. If we compare this to corporate travel, some expectations from our community members, what they think is that this might probably start a little bit quicker. And this is due to the need for businesses to start again. However, what they also say, they expect less corporate travelers to travel for business events, meetings, etc. But also what we have seen is that, like this online webinar, that remote working and online meetings also appear to be very effective and efficient. So this also really changes the routine in the way we work in the future, which also might impact the corporate travel, let's say. If we then look to the domestic travel versus international travel, well, obviously what we can expect is that domestic travel is going to be way more over international travel. And probably we can even expect that travel within driving distance is preferred over air travel at the starting moment when people are thinking about traveling again. If we then go to another topic, budget travel versus luxury travel. Well, even though luxury travel is hit hard, we also see and hear that there's a lot of potential there. As a lot of travelers are expecting now very much about hygiene, high standards in hygiene actually, and hence are going to choose their hotels accordingly. And also for a travel agent, it would be important to look into the reviews of hotels and also accommodations to provide the right deals for your customers, let's say, to bring them to hotels with good reviews, as people are going to ask for hygiene standards, and they will become way more important. Then about pricing, this is a difficult one. And to be honest, what we hear back from our community is a little bit changing. But one of the things that we hear is, especially for travel agents, that basically because of travelers are hit hard financially, obviously, but at some point they will start to travel again, think about traveling again, and they might need to have some incentives, which in this case can be, for instance, discounts, to give them a last push to actually go on a travel again. However, on the other hand, what I just explained, when we go to 100 customers or passengers in an airplane to 30 passengers, this also might mean that airlines are also going to ask for very high prices for a ticket. So maybe this is something we can discuss about later with some people of the audience. Then a very important one, the airline fraud versus travel agent fraud. This is actually an ongoing trend, also one we discovered together with ARC. Well, basically, fraudsters are moving their focus towards small and mid-sized travel agents when it's about fraud. And this is basically because small, mid-sized travel agents are having less resources, inferior knowledge, and also do not have that many fraud tools in place when you compare this to the larger airlines, for instance, or the large online travel agents that have sophisticated fraud tools. So this also made the fraudsters think about, why should we actually try to hit the larger online travel agents or airlines, but not the smaller travel agents that do not have the tools in place. And then finally, fraud risk. Well, obviously, fraudsters will be also up to date of the travel agents' methods and also strategies to start their business again, like the topics that we just discussed. Fraudsters will try to find methods to abuse the situation, even in times of COVID-19 at all times. So please be aware.
I would say the agencies need to be vigilant for, if it sounds too good to be true, it likely is. So if you start getting massive group bookings and you're not used to booking groups or tour packages, etc., and someone's coming to you to ask for that shortly after countries are reopening, just double check and make sure that you do your due diligence there of that customer.
Definitely. Can we go to the next slide? So this slide is about the risks that we can expect for travel agents. And this is also based on the feedback we received from our community members. And maybe some of us are expecting some other, let's say, red flags here. Basically, this is what we heard back. Like, some of the risks that we can expect is that people are trying to book tickets to visit relatives hit by COVID-19. This is something we mainly heard back from the Asian continent, and the same goes up for the second one here. So reservations to fly over relatives because they're having financial issues due to COVID-19. This is also something we heard back from the continent of Asia most recently. Then when we go to the third point, which is mainly hospital officers trying to book a ticket. This is something that came back, I think, at the first slide as well of this presentation. This is something we hear back from our community as well, and lately mainly from our European customers. So this is most probably going to happen in the United States as well. So please be aware of this risk, definitely. Also something which can be a risk, especially for the travel agents industry, is that, well, as discounts might be expected for travel agents, this can also indicate that the number of fake travel agents also will significantly rise. And when this happens, this is something maybe we can discuss later, this is also really impacting the travel agents industry. Obviously not a good trend. Then something we also expect is that there will be a lack of staff, which also means that there is a lack of resources in reviewing suspicious bookings, which makes validating your customers a little bit harder, but also should make you think about the methods, the tools, and the tactics you are going to use when things are getting normal again. Then we have some basic numbers. I think they also come from ARC, or at least the last one. I think we thought about this one. So fraudulent booking attempts at airlines and travel agents are up to 2% of all bookings, which is obviously a lot, especially in the industry we are all working in with the small margins. So therefore, it's very important to validate your customers. Because basically when you're receiving a single chargeback, this can mean that you need to sell an additional 29 new tickets to recover from this single chargeback. And this is basically because a single chargeback is not simply the ticket price, but there are a lot of associated costs that come with this chargeback, such as penalties for the chargeback, but also maybe your marketing and acquisition costs. It can harm your business, recurring income, etc., etc., etc.
And Photo, just to add, I mean, we've heard here from Andre about compromised cards being sold on the dark web. And those are the type of cards that you're going to find that's going to charge back, because that owner of the card, the original owner of that card, is going to identify an unapproved charge on their card, and they're going to charge it back. And unfortunately, you as a travel agent is going to be responsible for it. So it makes life a little bit more difficult when you know there are compromised cards out there.
Indeed. Well, obviously, we spoke now about the risks that you maybe already experienced in the past, but you should also really be aware of in the near future, when everything is hopefully getting back to normal. So I want to tell you a little bit more finally about the tool for validating your customers. This is basically a tool that we developed together with ARC. And it's a tool that allows you to check your suspicious transactions, as you can see in the image that we showed here. It's basically an easy-to-use tool that puts into the same data as our community members, such as the airlines and the online travel agents are using. And as you can see, you're able to fill out data elements such as the name, the phone, the email address, and also the IP address, and allows you to do a quick and easy check of your transactions. Important to understand, when you check your transaction, we will be returning a risk score, but also an explanation and a recommendation what to do with this specific transaction that is coming into your, let's say, travel agent, in different types of ways this can be, obviously. In the tool, we also have a feature to request for extra help, and you will receive some extra help from the ARC fraud experts. So this is also an opportunity you can find in the ARC risk check. So basically, if I'm correct, Cornelius, Doug, if you would like to use the ARC risk check tool for validating your customers, I think our customers are able to sign up in your ARC portal, if I'm correct.
That's correct. Yeah, that's exactly where they can go.
All right.
And we have a link in the next slide as well, an overview of where to go and what to do.
Great.
Get access. And I think Perseus has been gracious enough to extend a 2-month free trial or free usage, basically, to the agency environment lines who might be on the call here to use that tool. We're also making efforts and working with Andre to ensure that we can do validation checks on the data that's been found on the dark web, etc. So it is an evolved tool, and it is something that's definitely focused on the travel industry. Perseus has a lot of airlines and agencies globally contributing to that space, providing information and validating customers, etc. So feel free to give it a go and be prepared for when markets open up.
To add to that,
just Maarten, you want to say a few words?
If I can.
All right.
Yeah. No, to add to that, the ARC risk check is a combination between the thing that Perseus is doing and the data that Gemini finds on the dark web. I think that's a very important element to emphasize here. The combination of those two make that we just get a very good insight into what is happening.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So if anybody's interested, please go onto our corporate page and go to products or support. There's a link down there where you can learn more about the tool and also sign up for it. For any fraud issues or fraud concerns, we've got best practices, free tools available for you also on our core page, especially under the fraud section. Please go there, learn and read. We've got historical webinars there as well from our previous fraud months. Of course, if you see fraud and you need help, email us at stopfraud@rcorp.com. We're always ready to help. If you're not getting our fraud alerts, I mean, a lot of our fraud alerts are coming in, and the data from those fraud alerts are being loaded up into Perseus as well. So if you're not getting those, good for you. But if you do get them, it's we're here to help you out and respond to those fraud alerts coming in. We're here to help you and hopefully recover those funds as well and prevent that chargeback from coming in. Ideally, that's the objective. And then there for your information is Andre's, Doug, mine, and Wouter's contact information.